So thank you everyone for joining today's LF Decentralized Trust virtual meetup. We have a discussion today about the VS Code Debugger plugin for Hyperledger Fabric Chaincode. If anybody has any questions or comments or suggestions during the event, please do feel free to share. You can type your question in Zoom chat or raise your hand or just come off mute, and we welcome a discussion. And with that, Claudia and Chinmayi, take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Claudia, and I recently completed the LFDT Mentorship Program as a volunteer. I will co-present today's session with Chinmayi, my fellow cohort member. Together, we'll share our experiences during the mentorship, the skills we gained, and the challenges that we tackled. And we'll also give you a live demo of the VS Code plugin that we have built to streamline Fabric Chaincode debugging. So we'll start with an introduction. A little about me. I currently work as a freelance developer, but my journey into tech was quite unconventional. My previous experience involved working with children on the autism spectrum and neurodiverse individuals. However, I had always been passionate about coding, and in 2021, I made a career transition into tech. I taught myself how to code using FreeCodeCamp and other online resources, which eventually led me to open source contributions as well. So I'll talk a little bit about my motivation to choose this project. So I came across the LFDT, then it was the LFX mentorship program from Medium blogs. When I was looking into contributing to open source, I was drawn to this specific project because I thought it would be interesting to learn to build a VS Code plugin. And I was already familiar with JavaScript and Node.js. However, I had no knowledge in Fabric or blockchain technology. The application process was straightforward. I had to submit a CV and a cover letter to express my interest in this part of this particular project. And then we proceeded on to an interview phase where we shared a project that we were proud of that we had recently completed. And then several weeks later, I received an email that I had been accepted as a volunteer mentee. My goals for this mentorship was to learn how to contribute to open source. So as someone who is really new in tech, I often found it quite intimidating to navigate GitHub repositories to figure out how or even where to contribute. So I hope that through this process, having a mentor would help provide the guidance I needed. And additionally, it also would help me build my network and help me form meaningful connections in the tech community. Right now, I'll pass it along to Chinmayi.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. Hello, everyone. So for the introduction, I'm Chinmayi. I'm from India. Right now, I'm a third year BTech student at National Institute of Technology, Karnataka. I'm a mechanical engineering student. So while my academic background is in mechanical engineer, I had inclined towards software and I was exploring software development, blockchain, and data analytics. So have also built a strong foundation on full stack web development. So one of my key highlights of the journey is being accepted to this mentorship at Linux Foundation, where I worked on Hyperledger Fabrics. So it helped me. It also helped me understand about the challenges faced for the Hyperledger developers while working with and debugging the Fabric smart contract. So this was an exciting opportunity for me to contribute to the ecosystem while improving my technical skills and my collaboration skills while working with the team in an open source environment. So besides blockchain, I've also worked on several full stack development projects, including building an ITK Summer of Code website for my college using MERNstack. And I'm also excited to share that I'll be joining Apollo Global Management as a tech analyst intern this summer. And yeah, that's my introduction. So coming on to the mentorship, I was introduced to LFX mentorship by one of my seniors, and from that moment I had made it a habit to regularly check for the projects available and that aligned with my skills and interest. And the one thing is I didn't hesitate to apply whenever I found a project that excited me and that suited my skills. So, to coming on the selection process for the LFX mentorship, it had two rounds, application rounds, which typically required two documents, resume and my cover letter, where resume highlighted all my skills, past projects, and my relevant experiences, my educational background. Cover letter was the most important part of this application. It wasn't about just listing skills, which we would have already mentioned in the resume. It was about like communicating my motivation and interest in the project and how I could contribute to it. And the interview process, once I cleared the application round, I received an interview mail from my mentor. So the interview was for around 45 minutes. It had three key parts. First was introduction. I was asked to introduce about myself and my educational background, and then I was asked about my projects. I spoke about my full stack development experience, and then the technical discussion, which was for about 30 minutes. This part included basic DSA questions to assess my problem solving skills. And I was also asked about my schedule availability and how I would be able to commit to the project. Since I was very keen to work on this project, I made sure to convey my enthusiasm through my answer. And once I got selected, we had daily meetings where Arun sir explained each concept very clearly. Like we were very new to this, ensuring that we had basic understanding before diving into the hands-on. And then we gradually built our understanding of the project. Once we became more comfortable with the concepts, we were given tasks and assignments that required a bit of research and problem solving. So one of the most unique aspect of this mentorship was the global collaboration. Like we were a diverse team from different parts of the world, yet we coordinated our schedules and found common working hours and ensured smooth communication. So coming on to the problem statement, as a Hyperledger Fabric smart contract developer, one of the biggest challenges we face is the lack of native debugging support. So unlike traditional application development, where we can use the breakpoints and everything, the chain code debugging is entirely manual and time consuming. So right now, the only way to debug the Fabric chain code was to add a log statement. And it was the approach was highly inefficient, and it turns debugging into the cycle of trial and error. So to even begin with debugging, developers must set up a Hyperledger Fabric test network, which was not a small task. It requires setting up the peers, orders, and the chain code and certificate authorities. It was not just time consuming, but it also slowed down the development process as it had the steep learning curve for new developers. And it also involved the high cost of debugging for installing the chain code, adding log statements, running it on a test network, and everything. It consumed a lot of time, even for an experienced chain code developer. So making debugging overly complex. It required the knowledge of like multiple CLI tools and commands, which created a steep barrier for developers. So this is the problem we are trying to solve by our plugin.
All right, so we also looked at the available solutions that we had in the market, and we came across the IBM debugger and Spydra debugger. So with the IBM debugger, we found that there were quite a few limitations. One of it was that it required a manual setup. So the users had to manually build a V6 file and import it, which adds another level of complexity for the user. The IBM has also stopped supporting the debugger because it was discontinued in 2022. So there are no current updates or bug fixes. There was also network capability issues as well. The plugin behaves differently depending on whether the Fabric network was created on Ansible or IBM blockchain platforms, which can lead to inconsistencies. Then we also tested the Spydra debugger. With the Spydra, we found that there was a quick start network, so you can actually start the network from within VS Code, but it also posed an issue where the containers actually take time to fully initialize, and the automation script was already running. So we had a few errors that we faced with setting up the network. Spydra can be used to also debug chain code written in Node.js and Go, but users have to configure the launch JSON based on that programming language. The debugging settings will also change depending on whether it's native peer run or chain code as a service. And we also found the documentation and support for Spydra was quite limited. This is some of the notes that we had taken down during our wiki links by our mentor.
For the approach, we started by understanding the fundamentals of fabrics. We got to know what is Fabric. It's a permission blockchain framework. And unlike public blockchains like Ethereum and Bitcoin, which are open to everyone, which are public blockchains. This Fabric allows only the authorized participants to join the network. It makes it ideal for industries that give importance to privacy, security, and controlled access. So the key feature of Hyperledger Fabric is its private blockchain and subnet concept. In Fabric, the organizations can be grouped into subnets, or also called as channels. These channels allow the selective data sharing, ensuring only the relevant participants have the access to the specific transactions. This approach reduced the data exposure and it increased the scalability and efficiency. And the traditional process for handling assets, transactions, and approvals have always been time consuming and costly. Like for every change to an asset requires multiple approvals, like manual record keeping and the central authority intervention. So updating ledgers across multiple parties led to delays, higher cost, and increased risk of errors and frauds too. So the Fabric eliminates these efficiencies by offering a shared and tamper-proof ledger that updates in the real time. And the security is the crucial aspect of Fabric. So the framework uses the certificate authorities, digital signatures, and public key infrastructure to manage the identity and authentication. So every participant in the network as a unique digital certificate issued by the certificate authority. The transactions are digitally signed and verified, ensuring only the authorized users can interact with the blockchain. And Fabric runs its core components like peers, orders, and chain code inside the Docker containers. So with Docker, we can quickly set up and manage the Fabric network without worrying much about the dependencies. And then we did hands-on experience of setting up the Fabric to understand the real-world challenges. We brought up the network by using the Fabric samples repository, and we worked on creating the channel, invoking the chain code locally. Through this process, we faced various logs, and which helped us understand the problem statement. And then the next step was working on the debugger in the VS Code. We understood how the debugging works in the VS Code. And VS Code, the debugger helps us pause the execution and inspect the variables. To start with, like we started debugging by like pressing F5, then the application runs in the debug mode, which allows us to track what was happening inside our code. Next, there were also the feature of breakpoints. It's like they are like checkpoints in the code where the execution pauses, and we can set one by clicking it on the left margin in the VS Code IDE. And while debugging, we also needed to inspect variables. We can check them from the local window. And then to control debugging, VS Code also provides a debugger toolbox. It appears on the top when the debugging starts. It includes the button to step up, step down, then pause, restart, and stop execution. Yeah.
All right, the next approach that we took was also to explore options to implement a debugger in our VS Code plugin. And during this research, we discovered about Delph DEP. So DEP is actually a protocol used by code editors to communicate with the debugger. And Delph is a debugger for programs written in Go language. So we could implement Delph DEP to build into our debugger to build our debugger to work with debugging chain code for Go. The other thing we also implemented was Fabric SDKs for interacting with Hyperledger Fabric networks from VS Code plugin. So we had to use the Fabric SDK to connect to the network to invoke or query transactions on the blockchain. So when debugging chain code, you just invoke the transactions and call the chain code to make the quick changes to the ledger. And also we could query the ledger so we could get information about the block height. And then we also worked through the user experience. So here is an example of a mock debugger screen that Arun had drawn up of what it would look like. So we focused on the main goal for this was for the user to have ease of setup and automation. We wanted to make sure there was improved error handling and debugging visibility for the users. We wanted to also make sure that debugging was intuitive for different types of users, because the debugger was designed to be easy to use for developers with different level of experiences and backgrounds as well. Right, and now I will show you a demo of the debugger. Let me stop sharing the screen. So here we have the asset transfer Go file. I have already run the chain code lifecycle commands. And we're just going to start the debugger. Okay, now we have our debugger running. So we're just going to step through the code. And then I'm going to run the invoke command. Sorry, let me just run that again. Okay, let's run that invoke command again. Okay, so I'm not sure why it's not working right now. It was working 30 minutes ago. But yes, so what would happen is you would get once you invoke, you'd be able to read the variables over here. And then you could also, we have uploaded a connection profile over here, and you would be able to query the blocks as well. So let's see if that works. I've already uploaded the connection profile. Yes, so we're getting our block information over here, and you'll be able to see if you query it, the data from the blocks as well. Yeah, so you have the data hash and the previous hash as well. So we'll just have to try to get you a demo, take a video recording or something. Not sure, maybe my computer is running a little hot right now from Docker running for a while. But yes. All right, I'll pass it to Chinmayi. Chinmayi, do you want to take over?
Yeah, can you please present the screen?
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for the demo, Claudia. So moving forward, it's about the future plans. We aim to expand the debugger's capability to make it more efficient. And one of the key goals is to enable the debugging on a remote fabric network. Like right now, the debugger works locally, but in real world blockchain deployments, networks are distributed over across multiple machines. And then the next one is automating the install, approve, and commit commands. So these steps are required every time a new chain code version is deployed. So doing them manually is tedious. So by automating this, we can reduce the setup time and allow developers to focus on coding rather than the infrastructure management. And then extending the debugger to support the additional language. Currently, our debugger supports only Go language. So as Fabric also allows the chain code to be written in JavaScript and Java, we plan to extend to support these languages too. And this will help us a wide range of developers to use the plugin. And then we also aim to implement a state reader, which allow the developers to inspect and track the ledger states in the real time. And then finally, we plan to extend this debugger beyond VS Code. Since we are using DAP, Debugger Adapter Protocol, it's possible to integrate these features into other IDEs. So to make this possible, we would like to invite you to contribute to the improvement of this debugger. Like your insights, suggestions, and feedback will be invaluable for refining its capabilities and making it more effective for the Hyperledger Fabric community. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is our repository of Fabric Debugger, where we wrote the code and committed different versions and tracked our progress. So you can visit this GitHub repo, fork it, and explore the code base to understand how our debugger works. And about the learning and experiences throughout this program. This mentorship has been an incredible journey for me. This gave me hands-on experience with Hyperledger Fabrics, debugging, and open source. And one of my biggest learning was understanding how the open source project worked, like collaborating with developers worldwide and contributing to the large code bases and solving real-world problems. And beyond technical skills, this experience has taught me how to break down the complex topics and research the solutions and work in a structured way. And daily discussions with my mentor and my teammates in the initial days helped me understand more about the fabrics, which we were very new about it. And this mentorship has inspired me to keep contributing to the open source, and I plan to continue working on the Fabric debugger. And I'm confident that the skills I've gained here will also help me in my future projects. And most importantly, this journey has showed me the power of learning, collaboration, and the community. So it's not just about the code, it's about like solving problem together, and it was about building something meaningful. So yeah, that's about it, and I'll hand over it to Claudia.
Yes, thank you. So I have several key takeaways from this mentorship as well. I gained knowledge on Fabric Chaincode execution flow. As I stated in the beginning, I had no understanding of blockchain technology, but through this mentorship, I got to learn a lot. I learned about external chain code and the chain code lifecycle, as well as debugging methodologies. I also learned how to build a custom VS Code extension, and integrate those debugging tools and work with Delph Code Debugger to support Hyperledger Fabric developers. I managed to engage with experienced mentors and other open source contributors, learning best practices and being able to contribute to such a large scale project. The mentorship has also helped develop an interest in me to continue learning about blockchain development. So I would like to continue contributing in open source projects as well as similar projects to this. We are open for Q&A right now. Just a little note, I realized the mistake I made with the debugger because I did not update the package ID in the chaincode env file. So that's why it wasn't reading the invoke method. So I would try to show it again before the end of the session if possible. If it's okay, I will share my screen to go through the debugger.
Yes, I guess like we have the time. You can share it.
Okay, perfect. Let me run the debug command. Okay, that's that. I'm not sure why not. Okay. All right, then. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We will try to take a demo of the working debugger and share it.
Yeah, like thank you everyone for joining it. Yeah, like we can wrap up the session then. The session has ended. Thank you everyone for joining the session. Thank you, Claudia, for presenting.
Welcome. Mm.